How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
What's new? What's going on in the mortgage biz?
Lots
Not as
going on.
exciting as real estate when you almost get in a fight with somebody at the front door trying to get into a house this morning.
So good. Tell us about that real quick. So what happened?
Oh, it's a weird deal. Yeah, so there's a house on the market, about $700,000 house. It's staged up, and somebody, not the owner, is living in the home.
Why would that be?
I don't know why they do that. Because it's vacant, and maybe it'll help with maintain the property, or they get a little
rent,
a little money. You know why?
Really?
Pay
Anyhow,
for the utilities.
People do that?
Typically,
Scheduled the showing 4 days in advance. It wasn't on the market. Scheduled it with the agent directly.
Okay.
And we got to the house, and apparently the occupants were not aware that there was a showing that was going to be taking place at 8 a.m. So we got into a little conversation that was turned south quickly.
Did he use some harsh
He
language?
used some foul language towards me.
Were you carrying?
I tried to be pleasant.
Were you carrying
as much as I could?
Steal and carry?
What does that have anything to do with?
Well, I just so you're protected.
You're not going to
encourage
brandish my firearm at him.
No, you can't.
Hey,
you
buddy,
can't flash.
You better let me in.
I just worry that you were protected. You never know.
You're
Have
right.
you seen
You're
him?
right.
He's fine.
Yeah.
Take care of himself.
Took that course, of
we didn't go in though. We didn't go in. So real estate's exciting sometimes.
It is. So tell me, Keith, we talked earlier, and we'll get into the market, what's happening in the mortgage and the numbers, but
that's not as interesting as
it's not as interesting as your stuff, right? So I had a question for you, Senior. We talked this morning about listings and stuff, and I wrote down, how do you deal with the eventually of your listing recommendations? So you tell people on the front end, you got to do this, 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 this. People tend to do steps 1 and 2 versus 1 through 8.
Right.
How do you deal with that? Just because now we were talking at coffee this morning that, okay, now these people are finally to, step 7, right? But it takes forever. And how do you deal with just
sometimes
that?
It does. Sometimes
well, there's 2 phases of that. One I'll address, and one I want Keith to address because he's.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, he's really good at it. So when you.
Is it because of the firearm?
Yes.
Okay.
When you first talk to, when you bring the home on the market, okay, so I'm here, they're going to sell the house. We know they're going to sell the house, and they're going to sell the house right now.
Yep.
Okay. So we do our market research and based on our experience and what the market is today and where the market seems to be going, we make our recommendations about where they should put the home on the market and position it from a pricing standpoint and some of the condition things that they need to do to get make the home ready for sale.
Right.
I just laid out like I want them to do it all.
Okay.
Right. Because people always try to parse it. They say, well, what if I did this but not that? Then how much would it sell for?
Right.
What if I did? It's not that. I just know that if you did all this and we priced it here, that we are going to be competitive. We're going to compare well to the other properties that buyers are looking at. And there's a high likelihood that someone's going to think that we're a pretty good buy and make an offer on the property.
Okay.
Okay. Well, people make decisions based on emotion more than they do on reason in most cases. So they sell, and buyers and sellers no different. They make an emotional decision and they justify it with logic. So sometimes that emotional decision to not do something or to price a home higher than it probably should be, you just have to meet people where they are. And we make the recommendation, so we're on record, if you will, of saying this is what I believe it should be, and then you market the property and they'll come to terms. That's that conversation.
Okay.
The one that I want Keith to address is the one that's 3 years out.
3 years out, what do you mean?
Because that's the long-term engagement with people. When you go in and maybe would go, and I've seen him do it a number of times, where he'll go in and meet with somebody, and it's 3 years later that house will finally come back on the market or come on the market. And they've been doing things over the course of the last 3 years, and it's like,
yeah, sometimes you have a long-term relationship with somebody where
I thought he's just not good at closing the deal.
No.
They're just for whatever reason they're not moving, right? And so if they have that long-term push, then generally what we're doing is we're updating markets for them all throughout the process and staying engaged with them, because we'll meet with people that I don't know, not past clients.
Right.
I'll meet with people that they called me to help and sell their property, and we say, oh, well, the pricing's here. And they don't want to hear that. And so the hard part is developing that relationship with them and becoming their source of information and their resource to help them get their house in the right spot. And sometimes it's a matter of the market. And so when the market's going in the right direction up and we're not in a position financially to make the move right now we're working with them to say, okay, well, we're not going to get the money out of the house that we need to make that move. I don't want them to go call another agent that's just going to blow smoke. And so we'll talk about that and talk about the fact that there might be somebody that'll come out here and tell you a different scenario, but here's the experience and here are the numbers, and you can decide for yourself what you think. And then it's staying with them and really just staying with them to continue to help them. So when they do need maybe a company like we just had in with the Rainbow Restoration guys or the carpet folks or whoever that may be, is continuing to help them and not just leave them alone. Because if you come in and then you just leave them alone, then you're gonna lose that client. You're gonna lose that relationship. So you got to continue to build that relationship, and hopefully they do
help them
steps 1 through 7,
and help them
for us over time and help them get where they need to be.
And the thing of it is over that, and I've seen this a few times where I see every transaction that comes through. So I look at it and I always go back and see, well, where did that person come from? When was that? And I see things that we sold this year, and the first contact with that person was in 2013.
Wow.
That's a long time. Well, part of it is they were maybe was something unsettled in 2013 when they first decided that they were going to start investigating moving, but maybe that the price they needed to get out of that house was just unrealistic. And and then think of that, how from 13 till today, how many market cycles we've gone through. So there's a lot of dynamic in there and changes. And
that's my guy saying with the duplex.
I
mean, my guy saying with the duplex, we've been talking for 5 years, and just twice a year would check in, market, before the winter, see if we can hit it in the spring, check in again in the spring, what did it do? And it's closing next week. So
good job. Well, let's get into the mortgage market a little bit real quick. So I'm just going to give you some headlines that we ran across this past week that kind of gives you an idea. First headline says China had asked U.S. to remove tariffs in exchange for ag buys in talks Friday. So trying to get some resolution there. Next headline, bonds having a hard time trying to improve. We'll touch on that. Next one, mortgage rates turn higher after a strong start. Wall Street gains as earnings season begins in earnest. So earnings season is in the mix right now and going really well. So again, that's affecting the markets. Pre-Brexit paralysis, So they just kick the can on Brexit, So remember last week we talked about, hey, this weekend's going to be a big deal. Here it comes. And what do most things ends up happening? They kick the can, for a little bit further, and they keep talking that they're close to a deal, to a deal. So
always tomorrow.
Yep. So all those things put together, basically what we saw this last week is we saw mortgage interest rates tick up a little bit, but not significantly, So I'd love to make this big deal about it, but it really was pretty flat, ticked up a little bit. So it just means that the cost for a rate, we've seen a cost for some of our rates. So if you want to still be at like 3.625, whereas that might have been just par, meaning it didn't cost you anything, It's not, you don't get any credit back, but there's no cost. Well, now that 3.625 is probably going to have a little bit of cost to that rate. So I would tell everybody that we're in the high threes, mid to high threes on 30-year fixed, 15 years still low threes on 15-year fixed. It's cheap money. If there's a 3 in front of it, just be so happy, and we're seeing a lot of purchase business. We keep talking about how the fall, we start to get into our next market, our third trimester, as you like to say, senior. So we're seeing some of that. So we're seeing the purchase business pick up, and then we have a lot of filler with the refi stuff that we just continue to evaluate and see what's going on. This week, to be honest, I didn't lock a lot because we're waiting. I think the market's going to have a little bit of a dip yet coming up. We read way too much of this stuff that would bore the tears out of, kind of like the first segment, just pretty tough to get through. No, I'm just kidding. That was very funny. But people don't care. All they need to know is that rates ticked up a little bit higher. I think we're going to come back down a little bit as
Still
well.
Refi opportunities.
A lot of refi opportunities.
Over 4.5.
4.5. Oh yeah. 4.5. We take them down fast, and
we're
doing some
even a good rate.
4.5 is a great rate, right?
Yeah.
So, so a lot of good things happening. It's a great time of year. I love the fall. Football's going. Vikings are playing well. What else is there?
Mm-hmm.
Gophers are doing well. So have a conversation with me, 651-231-2500. Love to have a conversation with you and talk about what you could do to put yourself in a better financial position. Remember, we always have our Second Look Rewards program. We also have our free appraisal if you mentioned the radio show. So a lot of good stuff going on right now. Just give me a call.
Thanks, Kelvin. That's it for this week. We'll be back next week with another great show, 612-627-8000. Hit nerdgroup.com. See you next week.